round number 5 about to get underway. And we have quite a match for you. It is going to be Chakki taking on Amnesiac. My name's Cora, and joining me for this set is going to be Noxious. Noxious, this is 2 huge names going up against each other. They're both 3-1, which means that if they do pick up their second loss for either of these players would mean they need to win out to make it to the top 16.
Yeah, it's one of those things, unfortunate, that some of the I want to say favorites coming into the tournament will eventually face off against one another in the Swiss format. And you'll find that players like Amnesiac and Chakki, a bit off to a rocky start here. We saw them in round 1 lose their first match, respectively. Oh, no, Muzzy, that is, and Chakki lost their first match, and Amnesiac took it. Still, they end up meeting. Chakki may have had a loss, and Amnesiac may have had a win, but they still end up meeting at some point, which just goes to show how volatile sometimes the format can be in the early/mid stages. This is when it starts solidifying, though. So despite that fact, they're going to start calculating their losses, and they're going to matter a lot because 2 more losses from here on out means nearly elimination. Yeah, especially knowing that we're getting into the later stages of Swiss after this, the latter half, and tiebreakers could come in handy potentially. So you definitely don't want to pick those losses up early. And for both, well, for Chakki and Muzzy, who lost their matches in the very first round, Amnesiac did win his, but then lost somewhere between then and now. They're kind of early losses, so there's a lot riding on it for these guys. Chakki, of course, the DreamHack Austin inaugural champion, and Amnesiac has lots of DreamHack experience, several top 16 finishes under his belt. And just seeing these 2 titans of Hearthstone go up against each other, it's unfortunate for them, but it is really going to be cool for us. Yeah, and you can see here that they know each other very, very well. They attend events, they talk about competitive Hearthstone. If 2 people are, I want to say, on the same wavelength, I think these guys have to be it. Chakki may be more on the whimsical side at times. Amnesiac may be a bit more serious about things, but they're both hell-bent on the correct play. It seems like a word that they use very often. If you look at their vocabulary, a play is either correct or incorrect, and that is something they will state arbitrarily. When they find the play, they know that it is, and they can quickly identify it. So I have no doubt that they will play, I want to say, correctly going forward. I really don't expect any misplays from these guys. I think that's a good assumption to make. Let's take a look at our picks and bans for round number 5. Chakki versus Amnesiac. All right, Chakki's going to have his Paladin, Warlock, Mage, and Rogue. Amnesiac with the Druid, Priest, Warrior, and Rogue. We've seen both of them on stream before, but again, Chakki does not have Druid or Priest. He's picked Rogue and then 3 classes that most people assume you can pick one of in that 4th slot. Amnesiac has the Druid and the Priest. He's brought the Warrior in that 4th slot, however, and that in itself is a little bit unusual. Yeah, I feel like we just saw Chakki play the Warrior recently in, I want to say, Geico. I think that happened.
He actually, I believe he won yesterday. Yeah, so things went well, and the Warrior deck is definitely a good contender. One of the things that we noticed very quickly is that Chakki banned the Rogue for a very specific reason, is that when you've got your Paladin needing to line up well and the Zoo that needs to line up well, you can't afford having that Rogue come in and deny your goal of snowballing off of a good tempo start. Yeah, that's absolutely true. And with Chakki's rather unorthodox lineup, at least as far as what we expected to see, he's definitely looking to line them up with those targeted decks. You bring these lineups expecting to see a lot of Priest and Druid, and if you bring very aggressive decks, you can exploit those 2 very popular decks. So I imagine that is sort of the goal that Chakki is going for. Unfortunately, it didn't work out well for him in round number 1, but since then, he has won all 3 of his rounds. So his weekend has significantly turned toward the best, but we're about ready to get into game number 1. 2 titans of Hearthstone going up against each other in the very first DreamHack Denver Hearthstone Grand Prix. I can't wait to see what they've got. All right, it's going to be Chakki on his Zoo, and Amnesiac, well, that's a Druid with Yasharaj, so that's the big Druid. I can only assume we're thinking big. It's the biggest Druid there is. The mightiest Druid. Yeah, it's very reminiscent of Big Priest. You want to Barnes out large minions early, ramp and get to your large minions faster than any other deck possibly can. And Chakki is playing the Blood Imp special demon synergy version of this Zoo deck, likely to see Crystal Weavers, Blood Fury Potions potentially. Very, very aggressive build. Yeah, I really like this build as well, as we've talked about the fact that it gains more early game survivability
without the 2-drops, you really can't build a zoo deck. So you've had to sort of find a way to revolve around that 2-mana slot and still make something happen on the board. So Crystal Weaver was the solution. A demon-heavy deck with Blood Fury Potion and Crystal Weaver consolidates that early game and makes it at least stick around for the Bone Mayors to close out the game. On the Druid side for Amnesiac, what he's going to be looking to do is, of course, ramp up to the big plays. So looking, of course, for the usuals, Wild Growth, Jade Blossom, Nourish, Mire Keeper. But a card like Spreading Plague in this matchup, you just can't afford throwing back.
No, it is still, even though it was nerfed 1 mana, one of the strongest cards in the Druid class. It is absolutely a killer against aggressive decks that have wide boards of small minions and can't get over the 1/5 taunts evenly, essentially. So you definitely want to keep Spreading Plague, but that does mean that his early curve will be hurting a little bit. This deck versus Jade Druid hits those bigger minions earlier, right? Jade Druids need to ramp their mana first, and then they need to ramp their Jade Golems. For Amnesiac, he will need to ramp the mana, and then he just hits the big minions right away. So if he can get that payoff quickly, he'll be looking quite good. But Chakki's hand is very aggressive. He's got the Keleseth on 2, and Amnesiac doesn't have the ramp that he needs on turn 2. He missed the Wild Growth, he misses Jade Blossom. It's going to be hard for him to deal with the early aggression.
Yeah, the big saving grace from Amnesiac is that the Mire Keeper and Spreading Plague, they cure very well into one another. The big question, of course, is whether or not Amnesiac will opt for the coin Mire Keeper, get the ramp, then swipe, then Spreading Plague. Because I feel like that curve, while it's a little bit less, since you're not using Nourish, it's a bit weaker, quote-unquote. It does give you the opportunity to clean up board more reliably, and then you can transition into Medivh rather safely. We see Malygos in Amnesiac's hand. It's a card that I still see in Wild a lot in those big Druids, but not so much in Standard.
It has a huge, huge payoff. If you can land Malygos with Barnes, you can follow up with a Wrath or a Swipe, which is phenomenal with 5 spell damage. Ultimate Infestation as well, just then deals 10. So there's a lot of burst potential with the Malygos. It's also just a 4/12, which makes it fantastic against Priest. 4/12 plus Dragon equals pretty good.
Yeah, you just can't. And it's not as weak to Silence as, say, Twilight Drake. So it's just a 4-attack minion that prevents the Priest from dealing with it, barring the shenanigans with Pint-Size Horror.
Pint-Size Horror.
Just
ruins all the fun.
Things.
Amnesiac having picked up
Where's
another big minion.
So I just want to pause here. Without Aviana, I'm not used to seeing Kuhn and Malygos together.
Yeah, unless it's the OTK.
This is a pretty popular build in Wild. No kidding, it definitely is something people love to play, just the Aviana OTK. But this here just tells me that Amnesiac just values the fact that he can get 2 huge threats together with that Kuhn, maybe the emergency armor regeneration as well.
Just a free 7/7. I mean, if you're playing other big stuff, you might as well play Kuhn. Even some Jade Druids just play Kuhn, because on turn 10, you can go Kuhn, refresh your mana, Ultimate Infestation, and that is a power turn.
Yeah, get a 5/5, a 7/7, and some armor, plus some cards to replenish all the ramp that you've used up.
And if you've played Medivh before that, you also get a 10-drop. So
why not?
Yeah, you're starting to see the synergies come together with this deck. All of the large minions work well together, but it does falter against aggressive decks if you can't get there, if you can't get to those late mana turns, because you're just dead.
Yeah, and this is precisely why we saw him keep Spreading Plague. You know, ramp above all is a true statement for this type of deck, but you also need to survive. And you could almost view Spreading Plague as a means to ramp, because artificially you're postponing your demise by 1 turn and accelerating your way to those big drops while softening up the board. So it also, in a way, buys you the time that ramp sort of accelerates to.
It's just so good.
Yeah. Imagine that. Innervate was nerfed such that you could not Innervate out in the Spreading Plague anymore. And it was bumped up 1 mana, thus receiving a double nerf, and it's still strong.
Still almost too good in a lot of situations. But Chakki's just going to drop that Crystal Weaver, get those buffs, make the value trades, and start pushing face. Amnesiac isn't going to be taking this board back until he can play something for 8 or 9 mana, and that's still going to be a couple turns away. You can Nourish this turn for mana and Wild Growth. That is the play that gets you to your late turns fastest, but I think Amnesiac's feeling really pressured here. I wouldn't be surprised if he swipes.
The problem with Swipe is that it almost feels as though Chakki is meaning to give it to you. When you see him offer you this 5-4 with a 2-1 on the board, he's saying, swipe me, I've got a follow-up that's so strong it doesn't matter.
It's a tasty swipe.
And so Amnesiac could read into this and simply realize that, well, swipe is nice, keeps me alive for a turn or two, but then I have no comeback potential. I cannot recover. And so might opt for the Nourish Wild Growth play, bumping him up all the way immediately.
Yep, that's what he's going to go for.
9 mana mark.
Can't land Coon next turn.
But he's going to have Spreading Plague, and he's going to be able to use the swipe to finish off whatever's left over.
And then he does have Coon for if his health total gets too low, he can get the 10 armor from it. If he's able to take back the board, that's really reasonable. Chakki is going to want to press this initiative as much as he possibly can. Doomguard is the on-curve play, but you're sacrificing 2 cards in hand. A couple of weak cards on the right side, so you don't feel too bad about that. And he gets to keep the Bone Mare. That is the big keep there. Plus, you get 2 cards off of Malkazar's Imp.
Is there even a drawback at this point? He's so far ahead. Amnesiac is scrambling.
Every slight bad thing that I could see from Chakki is just not bad enough for him to lose here. Spreading Plague comes down. Slows Chakki down a little bit, but there's no Doomsayer behind it. Amnesiac can't even swipe behind it. He's still 1 mana off. And you see, like, if you Barnes out Deathwing Dragonlord, and then you have Malagos in hand, you just win the game with this deck.
I can see that. That's elegant. Does he run Anacondas?
I don't know.
Because they used to be run in some big druid lists, not so much anymore.
You can Barnes out the Anaconda as well if you have a big minion in hand.
Just druid things. But it's Amnesiac's game plan coming together now. Near the end here, Ultimate Infestation can help him come back tremendously, not for the card advantage as much as just getting the armor gain plus the 5/5 for trading tools. That's where it starts being extremely impactful. Amnesiac doesn't have much to do with those minions in hand.
You know what? I think this call by Amnesiac overall to bring this Druid as opposed to Jade Druid, a lot of people are rather disillusioned with Jade Druid right now. After the Innervate nerf, people just think it's not very good. There are others who are still diehard believers in Jade Druid. I'm a little bit on the fence myself, but bringing Big Druid and then a deck like Big Priest instead of Highlander Priest, you really can target the Jade Druid and the Highlander Priest with those explosive early turns. If you get the Barnes high rolls, you just win those games. So bringing these decks in this meta seems like a good meta call, but unfortunately there's a lot of aggro going around and you can still just whiff.
What to do?
Yeah, it seems like Amnesiac ran into one of the, I want to say, stronger Zoo openers we've seen as well.
It was very good.
We have to acknowledge the fact that there was the Keleseth on 2, there was the 1-drop. Everything sort of lined up for Chakki to really put on the pressure before Amnesiac could respond. And despite the ramp that Amnesiac put together, without the initial wild growth, he was 1 turn too late to the, I want to say, the Coon play. 1 turn earlier could get the swipe and the Spreading Plague, and I think at that point he would have been in a dominant position. 1 mana off.
Now he's just looking at surviving. You can Coon for mana and play Primordial Drake. Nothing dies except for the patches.
Yeah, Keleseth not having much of an impact here aside from the Voidwalker surviving and the Malkazar's Imp. But it's the damage output that's been presented to you over so many turns now. Nerubian Unraveler, we saw Chakki play that earlier in the Mage deck.
Bone Mare on the Captain, Malkazar into the Beetle, and that is lethal. Chakki going to take game number 1 with his Zoo build. Amnesiac's Big Druid now out of contention, and now he's got to counter this Zoo. And with starts like that, I can see why it's really hard to do.
Yeah, the Warrior also from Amnesiac, while an interesting deck to bring, is not really running into anything that he wants. The Zoo is not something the Pirate Warrior, in its current state at the very least, without Fire Warrior at 2 mana, wants to fight against. Because Zoo has lost some things over the years, but honestly, you know, even without Imgang Boss, they're still extremely potent.
Yeah.
And Keleseth has sort of added an extra, I win button.
The oomph it needed to really become a tier 1 deck again. And Pirate Warrior, while still good, losing the 2 slot for Pirate Warrior means you don't have Heroic Strike, means you don't have Bloodsail Raider, so your damage output in the late game is lower, your ability to contest the board in the early game is lower. Still a very aggressive deck, still very good against, I would say, Druids, Jade Druids in particular. If you get that early board, follow up with some Arcanite Reapers, you can certainly win games with this. That's why Amnesiac brought it. But against a deck that has a heavy early board plan like Zoo, you're not going to win that board fight.
Yeah, very rarely.
Not usually, at least.
And so I feel like the power of Pirate Warrior at the moment lies in the Arcanite Reaper. If I had to point to one card that makes the deck sort of hang around, is the fact that you can use that Arcanite Reaper to just push obscene amounts of damage in a single weapon. And it's particularly well tailored, of course, to buff that weapon to absurd heights. So by combining the Pirate package in the early game, the ability to maybe make that hook, maybe a 3-attack weapon, get some trades, and maybe transition to the Reaper, you have a game plan. But against a Zoo deck, weapons are good, but not if they're 5 mana.
And especially since the Zoo build does run taunts. You've got Voidwalkers, you have Blood Reaver Gul'dan to bring back the Voidwalkers, you have Bone Mares. There's a lot that Amnesiac will have to get through, and that's why he's going to go ahead and queue up the Priest. I see a Lich King in the opener, and I think that Amnesiac has gone full big with this lineup.
Yeah, it looks to me, I mean, Lich King is not something you commonly see in Razaka's Priest. There's that odd world in which he's actually running a Silence Priest. We've seen that more on ladder, and the experimental builds haven't yet made their way to tournament play. But it is an extremely strong deck. But Big Priest, of course, is by far the most likely one.
A lot of overlapping cards between all of the Priest builds, but either way you cut it, Chakki's got Keleseth on 2 again, so
yeah,
that is going to be a lot of early initiative for him, just deciding, does he want to go ahead and keep both 1-drops? Or throw back and try to find some more on-curve plays.
Yeah, wants to get the pressure out consecutive. He wants consecutive cards, right? You can't really afford to get, 1, 2, 1, 1 against that type of Priest build, because the Priest is especially well equipped to deal with wide boards of small stuff. They're not so good at dealing with staggered minions.
Yeah. Big, large, or big and large are the same thing. A large singular threat.
Right.
Much like Druid struggles with it, Priest struggles as well. 2 copies of Shadow Word Death if this is Big Priest, but that's about it. And then you're looking to play Pint Size and Shadow Word Horror to wipe boards of mid-range minions, which Zoo has as well. After Blood Reaver Gul'dan comes down, Pint Size Horror can do an okay job of clearing things up. So I'd say that Big Priest just naturally has that advantage because it has so much more removal. But also, you don't have the card draw that Highlander Priest does to get to the removal.
Yeah, you're really relying on Shadow Visions to get you there. The Northshire, sometimes AoE, but you can't run them in this deck. So you really are stuck with the Barnes, quote-unquote, high roll. The upside of the deck, though, is that it can be greedy. It's got the luxury of letting the opponent amass a board, wipe it out in one fell swoop, and then resetting again. But it has to have very specific combo pieces to do that, which is why cards like Shadow Visions have to be used extremely carefully to set up those board clears. Again, Zoo, you know what you're in for the most part. But if you want to get that Shadow Word Horror, you need the Pint-Size Potion in order to get that done.
Also, Dragonfire Potion is never a bad find there. But Amnesiac gonna get this Malchezaar's Imp out of the way. Knows that Chakki has Coin and Blood Fury Potion, and +3/+3 on a Malchezaar's Imp is more than Priest can deal with. So go ahead and get that out of the way. Don't worry about it. And you can Shadow Visions later on when you know exactly what you want to find.
Keleseth comes back. Amnesiac, probably not too happy to see that guy. One of the strongest, if not the single strongest card in the Zoo arsenal. Played early, of course.
Yeah.
Increases the win rate by a substantial margin.
It's just still a little bit unbelievable that we slept on this card for so long until the balance changes came around, and then we're like, okay, this is really good now. It's probably pretty good before too, and it just, Druid was so powerful that, I don't know.
It was really good in Elemental Rogue.
Nobody thought they wanted it.
Right, Elemental Rogue was already dominating with it. Well, for what Elemental and Tempo Rogue was able to dominate with prior.
Yeah.
But it was the only deck that used it.
So and now you see it in Zoo builds, the occasional Paladin build. It's a very flexible card.
Amnesiac does play 2 copies of Free from Ember, so the reason this card is present here
2 copies.
as a 2 of is because he actually wants to get additional statues. The discovery rate is a bit higher, and those are cheaper statues that you can get out, which can really matter because you find that as a Big Priest, oftentimes your health total ends up very awkwardly decreasing near the end of the game, and if you can get yourself that extra taunt.
Free from Amber is just a really flexible card. It is an all-star in Arena, and I'm glad we're getting to see it in Constructed too, because the power level can be very high. You can have an 8-mana Yashraj.
Yeah,
it's pretty good.
I assumed it would be a staple, but it didn't become one. Controlled Priests were just not a thing.
Yeah, some of these decks are running Forbidden Shaping. I imagine that Amnesiac's cut that just for the 2 Free from Ambers because it's consistent.
You can choose, you know.
Yeah.
There's a big difference.
You get to pick.
This Storm was fun sometimes.
Not all the time.
All right, Amnesiac does have the ability to use one of the 2 Shadow Word Horrors to just prevent this board from going anywhere. You can stop it now before the Coin Doomguard comes out. You see the second imp being played here. Either your opponent is sitting on a very top-heavy hand, which is partly the case. We do see that. But the biggest threat would be that the imp is played prior to a Coin Doomguard. Your opponent doesn't have a small hand size, so they're still able to keep going, and you just can't catch up. So cleaning the imp alongside the Keleseth seems a good way to maintain health and also negate the power of the cycle.
Yeah, both imps are gone now, especially since Amnesiac picked up that Shadow Word Horror off of Shadow Visions. He's got the natural copy in hand and the other copy in deck still, so plenty of potential once he picks up that Pint-Sized Potion to still get those massive board clears. Chakki can coin Doomguard, and if it doesn't discard Doomguard, he can roll right back into Doomguard, and Amnesiac doesn't have Shadow Word Death yet. This could be a very powerful series of turns if Chakki can get the right discards.
Yeah,
does he want to go for it, though?
Does he start with the Saronite Chain Gang, though? Because I think at this point he's looking to play the Bone Mare, one of the 2, on the minion after he's played the first Doomguard.
It's actually almost unfortunate that Chakki drew that second Doomguard, because now this hand is so powerful that you want to wait until after you've played the Bone Mares to play the Doomguards, but it's very unlikely that you get both Doomguards down.
Is one a 6/8? I think the one on the right might be a 6/8 at the moment, and the one on the left still a 5/7.
A lowly 5/7.
5/7 for 5 with Shard. Never mind that.
It's pretty good.
Amnesiac, no way to clear this unless he uses his last Shadow Word Horror. He's going to have to make a read happen here if he really wants to commit to it. Double Potion of Madness is cute, but it isn't really the way that you want to be using those.
Nah, just going to go for the Hero Power Pass. It's a weak hand from Amnesiac. He's looking for Dragonfire. He's looking for Pint-Sized Potion. Those removal combo pieces that, when pulled together, give him the essential board clears for Zoo. And then you just need to sort of wait it out, right? You have to wait until Chakki plays the important cards from hand or discards some of them, and then you find that right time to strike, clear the board. Then from then on out, you have the significantly better late game. So Chakki did end up discarding one of the Bone Mares, but was able to keep that Doomguard. So a coin Bone Mare could be coming out for next turn for Chakki, and then you can follow up with Doomguard the turn after. It's a very strong curve.
And just looking at that Doomguard, I want to point out that Keleseth and Doomguard have a really cool interaction against Prix because they put him just out of range with a Pint-Sized Shadow Word Horror.
Yeah, they do.
Because from 5 to 2, it dies. From 6 to 3, it lives, and suddenly the Priest is threatened again by another, 6-attack minion. There's really nothing that Amnesiac can do to that 6/8 without Shadow Word Death here. He'd have to silence it off first. There aren't too many silence targets granted, but you want to take off a Bone Mare buff.
Yeah,
very
ideally.
often, so.
The Bone Mare buffs will put the minions likely out of range of Pint-Sized Horror as well, so you'd ideally save it for that. Some of these Priest decks have been running Shadow Reaper Anduin, but I would say that most of them have cut it out. So the actual reach for killing large minions isn't great.
Yeah, he's going to go ahead and use the double Potion of Madness, that is. The setup here is, of course, for Dragonfire Potion.
Yeah.
If he's able to get himself the Dragonfire Potion, he will be able to clean up the Doomguard.
Perhaps preemptively greater healing potion this turn because you don't think you'll have time next turn. Yeah, this is really telegraphing Dragonfire, trying to maybe make Chakki not want to develop much because Amnesiac doesn't have it and he just needs to buy some time.
Well, the unfortunate thing is that Amnesiac using this removes the 2/3s, but if a Bone Mare comes down and the silence comes up as well, then that gets healed up. So the full health of the Doomguard comes back to 7. So the Bone Mare acts as a proxy heal on that Doomguard.
The Despicable Dreadlord also is 5/6, is out of range of Dragonfire Potion. I think Coin Bone Mare is just the most aggressive play. It's just the play that puts most on board. Chakki wants to get him.
Yeah, can't blame him. And we've seen here, Amnesiac's been
Sort of waiting. He's been waiting all game long. Man, that...
I mean, he picks up the Pint Size. He can silence the Doomguard. Pint Size Horror will kill it, but the Bone Mare is left on board. That's another 6 threat that he's looking at next turn. We can see Chakki has the second Doomguard in hand. Amnesiac just hasn't found what he needed this game. Ideally with this deck, early on you play Barnes, you play Eternal Servitude to resurrect the minion that you pulled from your deck, which is then, of course, summoned at full health. From there, you can usually just spiral that lead out of control. A lot of the cards that Amnesiac plays will generate additional resources, Ysera, Lich King, etc. Yasharaj pulls other minions from deck. We just didn't see that happen this game.
Yeah, Amnesiac, however, at least, I guess as a saving grace, silver lining in this entire horror story, has Free from Ember and the discovery rate being what it is, has a high chance of getting that statue. And if he can get that statue, even one of them, if the healing matters, then all the better. If it kills something relevant, all the better. And if you can resurrect it, then at that point, you've won the game. If he just gets a resurrection or another natural statue, a Lich King, now we're starting to get into the big turns for Amnesiac. And he's got another Free from Ember in the deck as well. He's got a chance.
He's got a lot of great draws coming up. We've seen already Silence, we've seen Shadowward Horror, Pint Size, a lot of the Potion of Madnesses. The weaker cards in his deck have been a little bit thinned, so the density of draws is quite good for him, at least after turn 8. You're absolutely right. If he can get that Obsidian statue, likely Chakki will have to trade 2 minions into it at least, so Amnesiac would heal for 8, and then the Death Rattle does randomly destroy something on the opponent's field. Great card.
Chakki's setting up a 2-turn lethal, however.
Okay.
We're down to that statue Hail Mary.
There's also Sogoth the Slitherer.
Sure. Doesn't heal. Ouch.
No, it doesn't heal, but it puts up a bit of a wall. You're just looking for time. Amnesiac needs to stall. He can still maybe find a way out of this.
Can I get a Kelesith buffed Sogoth, or because I'd like to trade with that.
I'd like one of those. Well, he gets 3 taunt options. I don't think you're picking Ozruk. Is Lich King too flimsy?
By 1
Do you value
HP?
the attack or the 1 health? That's my question.
Either way, the problem is that the Sogoth does not kill.
Yeah,
the
you value the attack.
Right? Army of the Dead! Oh,
trash! Man! All right, so
wait. Obsidian statue, right?
Yeah, but Army of the Dead in general in Big Priest is really, really bad. You only play like 7 minions in your deck in general. So for the most part, when you play this card, you end up burning majority spells from your deck. Now, Amnesiac could high roll with it, but how much damage does Chakki just have right here? He can get the clean clear with the Void Walker and the Bone Mare in. That leaves 5, 6, 12 damage on board. Close.
Just get double statue. Like, I'm excited for Army of the Dead.
It's absolutely going to happen. It is going to happen.
I'm excited about it because I don't see how he wins otherwise.
It's normally the worst card you could pull, but in this case, it may have been the best.
Let us see what Amnesiac can do. Can you do it, man? That's 1 bad card out of the way.
That's a card you didn't want to put on your board. Double Obsidian statue, Yasharaj, let's go.
He's just shrugging and saying, all right,
well,
let's go, let's
do it.
1 statue, that's health.
Barnes burns the death.
No Spellbreaker and you could heal. That's...
Is he alive? Is there anything that he wants to silence? To make the trades more awkward, potentially?
Yeah, that's what it would come down to. The 1/2 is fine. The 4/4 probably doesn't matter. So I think if you're silencing something, it's got to be the Bone Mare.
But then it doesn't really matter because the Doomguard on board.
Yeah, it just ends up going through and kills you. So
you're likely going to trade over with the Doomguard anyway. So it then has a chance of getting killed by the Death Rattle from the Obsidian statue. But that means Amnesiac is going to heal for 8.
And play Eternal Servitude on the following turn, thus bringing him back in the game.
Bring back another one. And Chakki is out of resources. Blood Reaver Gul'dan would be potentially game-ending in Chakki's favor here if he can find it. Amnesiac gonna silence that Flame Imp.
I see what he's doing. Just trying to kill the Bone Mare or the Doomguard.
Yeah, you want to try and land that Death Rattle if you can.
Chakki looking for Spellbreaker.
Oh, finds Soulfire.
Does that win since there's only
no,
one heal?
No, because then Doomguard or Bone Mare guaranteed dies.
Yeah.
It's an awkward position.
Well, you could right away with the Doomguard alone and push for 10, right? And push at least the 6, because the Soulfire...
Yeah, so you develop as much as you can on board. It's likely going to be Doomguard and Flame Imp going in.
No, Soulfire,
He's going to Soulfire, yeah.
Soulfire, Doomguard, and then you just end up...
Hope that whatever dies isn't
you close
the Bone Mare.
You close it out guaranteed, right? If it doesn't kill a minion.
Yep. So there you go. Yeah, if the Bone Mare had died there, then Chakki wouldn't have found the lethal Soulfire pickup. Even with that 4 life gain, it wasn't enough for Amnesiac. Really close there. One more turn and he would have had the Eternal Servitude. It's too little too late.
We were talking about the deck earlier. You were telling me just how much you love Big Priest.
I like it.
I was dissing it.
I know you were.
But then I was more excited than you about the prospect of him Army of the Deading.
It's because I love Big Priest. I despise Army of the Dead. I've played a lot of Lich King. I've gotten a lot of really bad results. Let's just say I'm pretty sure Frostmourn's bugged. I'm pretty sure it is. I think it's bugged.
For Priests.
All I know is I get a lot of Obliterate and a lot of Army of the Dead.
The only way you're going to embrace the Shadow is through Shadow Reaper Anduin. You are not allowed to do it through the Lich King.
All right, Chakki bringing this Warlock deck out for a 3rd time. Was able to close out that last game, although Amnesiac did ultimately end up getting pretty close. So can he get the reverse sweep with the Pirate Warrior with no 2-drops except for Prince Keleseth? But there he is, but there is also Patches.
Patches the Pirate, not the site that Amnesiac was hoping to get here. I guess the one upside is that you weren't getting Prince Keleseth's value out of it in this case if you were going to open up with 1-drops to counter his. But Amnesiac would have loved to be able to coin out that Keleseth and get the 2-2 on the back.
He's playing Nerubian Unraveler in his zoo.
I'm pretty sure Chakki was just aiming to kill Priest off.
Yeah.
But based on what we've seen so far, Nerubian Unraveler is in Zoo. It's in the Secret Mage, and it's in... I think it might even be in his Paladin at this point. Like, yeah.
He just loves it.
It's my favorite card, and it was my Tempo Rogue prior to changes. Yeah.
Well, it was working out very well for Chakki in the Geico tournament that he was playing in the last couple of days. He ended up winning yesterday. Oh, and now there's Patches all around. Okay.
The Equalizer.
Amnesiac is finally ahead. Took him a couple of games, but he finds Keleseth and Chakki doesn't.
And this might be what he needs to really stabilize in this set, because he's on match point.
Yeah.
And again, this is going to be giving either of these players their 2nd loss on the scoreboard in the Swiss, which means that they cannot really afford dropping another one afterwards. So they're going to have a perfect score after this one, whoever takes it. Amnesiac does have to go through the Warlock, the Paladin, and the Mage with his Warrior, so that's going to be an uphill battle, to say the least.
It's a tall order. But if anybody can do it, it's the Young Savage for sure.
That's a good turn from Amnesiac, though. Gets a 2-3 Firefly, gets the Nazaz first mate hook, and he's ahead on board, has more minions, has the weapon.
Yeah, it's of course unfortunate that Patches is in hand instead of on board, because you could have had just 2 more damage trading in. But
it is
still looking pretty good. You work with what you got. Chakki drew Patches, you drew Patches, you're feeling okay because you have Keleseth.
Yeah, something like Blood Fury Potion is also rather annoying here if you're Amnesiac, because that 4-6 just... Wow! The draw to rule them all. There you go.
Oh, baby, that's... Yeah.
The Caster Curse.
There you go.
I strike again.
Well, Chakki needed something, because his hand right now is very, very weak. Against Warrior especially, Zoo needs to fight aggressively for board early on, and Blood Fury Potion is a great way to do it. When played on a Demon, you get that full +3/+3 effect. And it's going to be a bit tough for Amnesiac to get through that.
There's very little in the deck from Amnesiac, aside from Spellbreaker, that easily deals with the 4-6. At least he's able to develop the Dread Corsair, so that's going to give him some fighting chance, assuming Chakki's hand is as weak as it is.
I mean, Amnesiac can just kill the 4-6 Void on curve if Chakki chooses not to trade. Now he may struggle a little bit. But with any number of great weapons in deck, cards like Upgrade, and Bloodsail Cultist can make these trades easier. That's really what the Warrior thrives on, is trades via weapon. But now that, you know, Fiery War Axe is 3 mana and they're largely just not playing it, your trade game is a little bit worse than it used to be. What do you think he made that trade there?
I'm mostly wondering if Bloodsail Cultist is a consideration if you're Chakki, or if it does not matter, because he definitely does not respect the Pirates in this spot.
Yeah.
Based on this line of play.
Choose not to trade into the first mate.
Right, because usually when you trade for the Tooth-3, it's to protect something else in case your Voidwalker gets untaunted, let's say, unbuffed. There aren't too many things that do that, and look at that. Amnesiac facing down one single Voidwalker with a Blood Fury potion is forced to put a halt to all of the progress and just play the waiting game with weapon buffs, eventually clearing it up.
Firefly is an amazing card.
Yeah, gives even the least board-centric classes a way to fight for it.
Yeah, gives you something to do in the early turns. And Chakki with that Malchezaar's Imp pickup is going to want to life tap here. What's he hoping to pick up on 2? Keleseth would be really nice. Start getting his own buffed minions rolling.
Do you ever see him just play Imp, Soulfire, and then see what he gets that way instead of tapping first?
I think that's what he's considering.
Yeah.
But there are much better uses for Soulfire. But the minions that are drawn now for Amnesiac are buffed. So you need to keep that in mind, right? Soulfire doesn't just straight up kill Naga Corsair anymore. Still kills Korkron. Was never going to kill Hydra, so that doesn't matter.
Soulfire's gotten a lot more value. You don't get to kill the 3 drops, but you get to hit some of the other ones that are present in there. Dread Corsair being usually one of the prime targets for it.
Yeah.
And we saw the Argent Commander as well in Amnesiac's list in the Mulligan phase, which is extremely potent. And that's that right there.
Now we are talking. This could be one big frothing Berserker. Amnesiac looks like he was going to make the trades this turn, but he probably wanted to drop down that Naga Corsair.
Yeah, I guess the question is it really correct to play the Frothing? Because while it's big, it dies to Soulfire and the board. So suddenly you're surrendering your advantage for that, but you're getting a big minion. I'm not sure how much a big minion is worth at the moment.
You would need to kill the Malchezaar's Imp as well to ensure that just Soulfire doesn't kill the Frothing. So I think that Naga Corsair is still just the way to go.
Yeah.
But
the greed is appealing.
The greed is lovely.
Yeah, Naga Corsair, because it's a 6-5. You just can't fight against a 6-5 in this spot. So it's just safer. It gives you more trading game as well because you get 2 charges of the hook with 2 attack as opposed to just the 1 if you use it right away.
Yeah, plus you just put a 6-5 on board, right? Like your Frothing Berserker would have been, you know, slightly larger than this, but not too much, and you would have had less minion resources on the board overall. So this is just the more efficient play. And Chakki with Captain on the top is still just having a really awkward time of navigating this game.
Yeah, he picked up the patches already earlier from the draw, so there's nothing coming out. There's not a 2-2 to rescue the day here and maybe kill one of the Flame Elementals. And the Captain is just a 3-3. Soulfire could draw into something useful. Is there a 4-drop that would make him happy? Not much more than a guaranteed 3-3, I think.
I think you're likely to just go ahead and take the guaranteed board presence while you can. Okay, picks up the Flame Imp. That's something else at least. Dies to the Rusty Hook, but you know, at least it gets rid of that hook charge.
Amnesiac's starting to look a lot stronger now with that hand texture. It seems like with the Dread Corsair and the Frothing coming down on the same turn, this is going to be fighting Zoo off very nicely. Yeah, Amnesiac is doing very well right now. Look at these little buffs. Just an annoying extra 1 health has to be dedicated.
I'm still a little bit baffled that we're seeing Blood Imp in competitive play. It's great. It works beautifully, but it's just so unusual.
Yeah.
You know?
What I love about, like we were talking about this with Lorinda earlier, is that you don't just get Blood Imp, because Blood Imp alone is never appealing. Blood Imp and Blood Fury, oh, suddenly you've got something.
Suddenly
Blood
it
Imp
makes sense.
and Crystal Weaver, that's sensible. And, you know, it's just such an elegant solution to the Zoo crisis that I feel has been ongoing for so long, where we're all trying to play Silverware Golems and, you know, the Clutch Mother. It's
It doesn't feel like the zoo you want it to be.
You don't like nether portals?
Man, I do love
you
some discard.
You don't like 3/2 demons every turn?
2 of them at the end that I can't control and dictate trades with, that dilute my Blood Reaver Gul'dan. I love them.
Great, I'm glad we're on the same page. Yeah, discard Zulok was unfortunately just not what I think Blizzard hoped it would be.
Yeah, the concept is cool, and the portal is awesome.
Yeah, it's
when
very
I play
cool.
it, it's great, but it takes me
but
so many games.
It just isn't great. I don't know. Kibler managed to make it work. Maybe it's just us.
I made it work. It worked okay, but it wasn't.
It happened.
It's exciting. I'll say that much.
Yeah, it's great. The payoff is nice, but you could also just play Blood Reaver Gul'dan and regular Zoo.
That's boring. Then you only get Blood Imps. Although I'll say that's probably more interesting than some of the Blood Reaver control deck that we've seen. It's a very unique twist on Blood Reaver Gul'dan because you did not expect that card to show up in a Zoo deck, because it seemed like demons were, I wouldn't say phased out of Zoo, but they were never the focal point of the archetype.
Especially since one of the best demons in the game is just Abyssal Enforcer. You can't play that in Zoo. It works against you. So, of course, you figure likely just going to see it in Control Warlock builds. Well, lo and behold, Blood Reaver Gul'dan is phenomenal with Doomguard if you don't end up discarding it.
Amnesiac's got 2 lines of play that are obvious here. The primary one is, well, play a charge minion, go face play on curve. The alternative one is, I think, more appealing, where you set up the taunt to protect your Frothing Berserker, play patches as well, get the extra ping, and then you keep the charger for whenever you need to finish off the game.
The Argent Commander is really interesting. It's also a great trade tool, especially at 5 attack. Now it will do some real damage to whatever Chakki can play. However, if you can just represent lethal, you go for it. Chakki can Doomguard into that Frothing, but I don't see a way for him to clear both of these minions. Yep,
yeah, it would have to be it. It would have to be specifically Voidwalker #2 plus the Doomguard, thus trading and buying you 1 turn, but then how do you survive? You have to get Soulfire and some other shenanigans, which are extremely unlikely to occur. So Amnesiac puts the first point on the board.
He's fighting his way back from a disadvantage. Chakki took the first 2 games with the Warlock, but now Chakki has a chance to counter this Pirate Warrior. He's got the Paladin and the Mage. Paladin, I'm assuming, is Murloc Paladin, and the Mage, I think we saw Chakki playing it earlier. I think it's a Secret Mage that he had a copy of Spellbender in. So now it's time for him to decide, does he want to go in with that Secret Mage against Pirate Warrior, or does he feel like his chances are better with the Paladin?
Well, he might play with whichever deck is least favorite, just to throw it out there if you think so. Either way, you have to play both. So you might as well just queue up. If you want to save time and save yourself the headache,
doesn't really matter.
The fatigue, then you just start with the better matchup. I believe that in this case, the Paladin's just usually better at fighting. Without Fiery War Axe, let's just say Warrior's been struggling to catch up to those 1/3s, man.
Well, I mean, you got it. You can coin it onto. And then it's a little bit underwhelming, but Fire War Axe is still here. It's still strong.
It's a playable card.
It's a card.
I like that. Your optimism is boundless.
That's what you think. Till I look at Innervate and my soul breaks.
I've been trying to build some off the... I think the Innervate has made Druid suffer, not where you think it would.
So mad.
It's just where you want, because sometimes you want to just build a mill deck. You know, in Wild, you just want to build a mill Druid.
You can't Innervate now.
It's like, I can't Innervate my cards.
And bro, why'd you hurt Mill Druid?
Don't do it.
All right, but yeah, Chakki's got a Murloc Paladin build with a reasonable early curve. That Rallying Blade is a phenomenal trading tool into the early minions from Amnesiac, namely those Dread Corsairs. Little struggle with the Cultist, but you have a lot of early minion Murlocs that you can use to make those trades a little bit cleaner.
Yeah, Amnesiac's going to be looking at this point just to get the curved, you know, the coin axe, kill the 1/3, play the South Sea deckhand, get a kill with it, then maybe get yourself the Cultist activated afterwards to get the Fire War Axe. It's all a little bit off curve, and it feels a bit awkward if you're the Pirate Warrior player, which just goes to show how strong the curve used to be. Because it used to be that you did not need to coin that out. It just happened naturally. But now it's all kind of delayed by 1 turn. Oh.
I mean, there was a reason why Pirate Warrior was the best deck in the meta for a very long time. Why some of the best players in the game just really focused hard onto this deck because it was so incredibly strong. Now even with Fire War Axe at 3 mana, it just means you have a natural slot to put in Keleseth. Still very strong.
Yeah, the deck still finds its way into some tier 2 lists. So.
Yeah. I mean, Amnesiac's running it. I tend to trust him. Unfortunate that Chakki didn't have the Rock Pool on to buff the Vilefin out of reach of the Fiery War Axe, but great for Amnesiac because he's going to need to start trading away.
Yeah, this is very good, though, for him. Getting the Dread Corsair was probably one of the better things that could have happened to him in this early stage of the game. Granted, you could make the argument for Keleseth, but he's definitely more on the warpath of getting those pirates to stick and buffing the weapon simultaneously. And so the Corsair guarantees almost that he's going to get one of these pirates to stay around. It's a little bit tricky when the opponent has more minions than you, but in this case, he's been able to weather the storm.
So Pirate Warrior, I can see how it would definitely have trouble against Murloc Paladin. You want to get those valuable trades in the early turns, make as much use out of early weapons as you can, the Rusty Hooks, the Fiery War Axes, to get those value trades. Put your minions on the board at the same time, and then eventually you need to shift your game plan to a much more aggressive one. Try to close out the game. That's where Arcanite Reaper, Argent Commander, and Leroy really come into play. But the Murloc Paladin plays Spike Ridge Steed, plays Bone Mare, maybe plays Tyrion. Cards that Amnesiac can't get through unless he has Spellbreaker, right? Cards that significantly slow down the reach from the Pirate Warrior. And especially when the Murloc Paladin is ahead in the early game, it can be very tough for the Pirate Warrior to find the damage it needs to actually close out the game.
Yeah, and it's no surprise Amnesiac has been reluctant to sort of jam that Warrior against the Zoo that we saw come out. The Zoo is similar to Murloc Paladin in that way. It seizes the board early, doesn't let go of it. It's very hard to reach through the taunts. So Amnesiac's got bad matchup after bad matchup. It seems starting up against Chakki. Has a chance. I mean, he gets himself the weapon buff nearly guaranteed in the follow-up turns, but...
Oh.
That's painful.
Chakki could just go for the King's buff and clean kill onto the Frothing, preserving the other Murloc. Amnesiac played this just because on board, Chakki is forced to double trade and one Murloc dies guaranteed. It would be the Cold Light here. With that Megasaur pickup, we can prevent that. With the Kings in hand, we can prevent it. You could even go Rallying Blade Repentance. You'd rather play it going into turn 5 because of Bittertide Hydra, but it's got options.
I like the Megasaur, as you mentioned. You know, getting Divine Shield's great, getting +3 attack, getting Poisonous. I mean, those are all options that keep your Murlocs safe. So most of them are going to lead you ahead. You'd have to be unlucky to hit neither of all those.
Yeah.
You know, it would be...
It's very unlikely that you hit like Stealth can't be targeted, and even Plants is okay.
Plants is fine.
Yeah.
What else would you have to hit? Wind Fury? I mean, that's acceptable, but you can trade one Murloc in at least.
It'd be okay still. Yeah. Either way, you end up salvaging one of your Murlocs. This way, you just have 2.
Amnesiac, though, probably rather happy to see that the turn is quote-unquote slow. So this wasn't a game-ending Megasaur. There are multiple types of Megasaur. Some of them win the game outright. Some of them are there just to consolidate a lead, which this was. And when you see that in your Amnesiac, you have the ability to make your War Axe bigger, which means you're getting 2 trades off of it. So you're still in the game. Even though you might feel like you're a little bit behind, that's not so much the case, I think. With the deck hand and the Cultist, you're able to wipe that board and play the Corsair on the back of it.
It's definitely not worst case scenario for Amnesiac, and this is a very powerful turn. You can kill off 2 of the minions, set up that Dread Corsair in the way of the Hydrologist, and he's got the Hydra now for next turn and the Argent Commander as follow-up. So he's actually curved out very, very well. Chakki has... Oh, that's very scary. Chakki's got the counterplay, but he's actually running a little bit low. The Repentance can come down this turn and try to target that Hydra, but this is where just that weapon value is so massive. This Fiery War Axe has taken out 2 minions. It's going to take out a 3rd.
Yeah, it took a bit of time to set up. It took some sequencing of plays and waiting game, I want to say. You know, he could have hurried into it earlier and never gotten that value and would not be able to fight off against anything. But because he waited until he had all the pieces assembled, is able to use that weapon to its fullest extent. And Chakki on the other side seemed like he was dominating. I mean, he had
his
3
early
minions
start
to his opponent's nothing.
Good.
And now we see the table's turning a little bit. Chakki might opt to make this Murloc an 8 health Murloc, which puts it out of range of the War Axe alone. That's a possibility. But
Kings plus Repentance is the mana efficient play, and especially going into turn 5.
With Hydra.
That's the reason that you took the Repentance. Your Hydrologist does die, but
if
it hopefully takes both the minions on board with it.
Yeah, I mean, Amnesiac has to double trade into it or play the Naga Corsair. Naga Corsair seems like the logical, line of play here.
Especially seeing that this secret could be Repentance. Playing Bitter Tide could have you very punished. Could also be Noble Sacrifice, so I expect that it'll hit with the Cultist to face first after playing the Naga. But once he sees that it's Repentance, he'll be fine.
There's a possibility of Redemption or Getaway Kodo.
Yeah, hit first with Cultist. If it's Noble Sacrifice, you play Hydra. Actually, no, you still probably just play Naga. Get the kill on the Hydrologist. I think either way that's happening. Could be Getaway Kodo.
Either way, I think the Naga Corsair ends up coming down just out of safety.
It's just better.
The safety is worth too much, because otherwise you're just trading your 3/4 and your weapon for measly 5,
It's too valuable to keep that Cultist around.
Yeah.
Trades into War Leaders, doesn't get killed by Rallying Blade. Way, way too valuable to just give that up.
Does Chakki play Righteous Outlaw or Righteous Protector? Sorry.
I would imagine, yeah. Usually every Murloc Paladin list has a couple copies of that. Sunkeeper, tear him off the top. I mean, it challenges the board, but it's not ideal. There's nothing that is really ideal for Chakki here. I don't think he's running Consecration, and they certainly don't have Equality alongside it, so no board clear potential.
How do you feel about Hero Power Megasaur? Gives you a little 1/1 guy that can maybe get buffed by War Leader. If you stealth him up, give him more health, can happen as well. Give him Divine Shield, can be buffed by the Blade on the following turn because it gets ignored most of the time. You can use it as fodder with Tareem on the following turn to guarantee a trade. It's a setup for trading. It doesn't do anything right now.
You may just have to go for it, right? Like, you need something to live. Maybe you hope that you top deck Spike Ridge Steed. Chakki disagrees.
But it's a similar line of play. The idea is that you get a bunch of guys on the board and set a way up from the trade. And
this ideally sets up the clear onto the Bloodsail Cultist if Amnesiac doesn't have anything else. And even still, he may just not bother to trade anything else into this if it's not, a N'Zoth's First Mate. That's the only thing I could see Amnesiac actually bothering to kill this Murloc with.
There's a big fear for Amnesiac, of course, of playing the Hydra at this point. He is at 15 health. That's 5 hits into it. Granted, 5 hits takes a while, but his opponent's not near death. So 5 hits can definitely occur.
He's still in that kind of in-between phase right now, where he hasn't fully shifted his game plan from board control to aggression, but he's starting to see that Chakki's struggling a little bit.
Maybe Argent Commander is just that the way to break the stalemate.
Maybe you just go.
That's a way to break the stalemate, I think. It's either that you play the Hydra and worry not about your health and commit all into the face.
Yeah. And Chakki with that Rallying Blade last turn sets up nicely for the Tarim this turn as well. Even if it's just by itself, then the Blade gets a kill naturally on whatever you want it to.
Yeah, so that's the trade exactly that Chakki was hoping to get. Any minion Tarim ends up killing, and Amnesiac, of course, recognizes that.
The Curator, okay. I wonder if Chakki's got Primordial Drake. That could really change things.
There's at least Scalebane.
Yeah.
I mean...
It's usually 2 copies of Cobalt Scalebane, but...
Well, I could see that. I like the idea of the Drake in here.
Yeah, more controlling lists can run it. It's not a staple right now, though. It's certainly not. Drake really fell out of favor. We've seen it come back a little bit into Jade Druid, but I don't think Paladin has quite picked it up yet. But then again, I don't think a lot of people are playing Paladin.
Yeah, I think that this is probably... I think Paladin and Warrior... I mean, eliminate Hunter. It doesn't exist. Paladin and Warrior are sort of the 2...
Oh, poor Rexy.
...classes at the bottom of the hierarchy right now.
Yeah. But Paladin is still way, way, way ahead of Warrior. Paladin still, we're seeing pick up sweeps in Trinity Series. It's still a really formidable deck.
Hydra not going to lead to Amnesiac's early demise, but he's still not in a comfortable position.
Yeah.
His trades, barring an Arcanite Reaper, and we spoke about that before the match started, it seems to be the card that keeps the entire deck together. Barring that, your damage output is not quite where you want it to be.
Yeah,
I mean, you
miss
get
heroic
decent
strikes.
trades, but yeah, you're missing everything from the usual bursty arsenal of Warrior.
Yeah.
Back to the Bluegill Warriors and Wolf Riders.
Oh my goodness.
Off we
days. The days. But Chakki's got that Curator. If he can just find Spike Ridge Steed, and he's got the hero power just to have something to land it on. Amnesiac doesn't have Spellbreaker in hand. Chakki's got the taunt potential to shut down the minions that Amnesiac has. He just needs to find it.
Yeah, whether we're talking about Tyrion, the natural
Steed,
Tyrion.
Just this Curator. No, he's just gonna go. Put the most stats on board that he can, try to
Sets up
challenge this
lethal.
board. Still, yeah, I mean, he's just setting up lethal as well. Still at 19. Amnesiac forced to clear this, but he would anyway.
Well, that gives Amnesiac a tiny opening. I mean, granted, Chakki knows he's got a taunt. He knows he's safe. But it gives Amnesiac a very, very small opening here.
I don't think there was any way that Amnesiac could have done it. Arcanite, double upgrade.
In this
You
game?
don't, yeah, you don't have strikes.
No, at this point, it's all the upgrades and Arcanite Reaper.
Yeah,
You
and
have
then
to find
over the
Reapers
course of 2
somewhere.
turns.
Yeah, and like turn 7, if you find it, play
But-
it then, and then finish
Yeah.
off the game.
But now Amnesiac may just be forced to actually play the Corcoran and trade with it. No weapon active for South Sea Deckhand. Chakki's just looking to end this game. Amnesiac will definitely feel like he needs to kill the Cobalt Scalebane because of the continuous value that it generates. But then Megasaur's still in hand, could drop down and just get Wind Fury. End the game that way if Amnesiac doesn't have the mana to hero power this turn.
Do you ever just go face for the 5 here? Because he does have to trade away the Scalebane, and then you can finish it off later, so you can at least extract a small amount of damage from this.
Yeah, if Spike Ridge Steed comes down on this, you're definitely not happy. But I don't think you would have been happy anyway. So
There aren't too many happy endings here for Amnesiac.
just kind of have to go for it. He's got to find the damage somewhere. He doesn't have the Reapers. This is the push that Amnesiac has. So he has got to go for it. Now putting Chakki on the trade, right? So Chakki needs to trade this Cobalt Scalebane away. Just like he made Amnesiac do last turn.
Yeah, Chakki's got a good read on that hand, though. I mean, there is no weapon. There's just nothing there, man.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
All
Well, he knows
this
there's
is
a
that-
Flame Elemental and
Sure.
then one card that Amnesiac, you know, if it was Arcanite Reaper, probably would have played.
The scary part is if it's Spellbreaker, because that suddenly makes sense given the attack that was just made.
Yeah.
Then we get into a bit of dangerous territory. But since you're representing a counter kill, assuming you leave the Scalebane alive, yeah,
All right,
there's the big fear.
Yeah, it just looks like the traditional double Scalebane list. Megasaurs, of course, we've seen already, so not pulled from the Curator. But a 4/6 taunt is enough to put up a roadblock for Amnesiac. He doesn't find a silence or a strong weapon.
I don't think there's a single card in Amnesiac's deck, even Spellbreaker, that makes this
No.
a victory. The only combination would be if the current card on the right is Spellbreaker and the draw is Arcanite Reaper. That would push lethal. So Chakki recognizes that, takes off the 4 damage that would finish him off, and knows that Amnesiac simply can't win this.
He can survive, he just can't win this turn.
Fair enough.
He can actually full clear board with just the upgrade and
Just the
South Sea
upgrade and
Deckhand.
South Sea Deckhand,
Yeah.
yeah.
So play it all. Go for the board clear. You lose everything except for the 1/2, but it's what you have to do. And now Amnesiac is really relying on that Arcanite top deck into,
Did he play
you know,
Bone?
Leroy.
Did he play Bone Mare? I didn't see it, but I mean, if it's in there, he seems to be building this like a zoo deck with a bunch of chargers. It's like,
Yeah, I mean, with the Argent Commanders, I would especially think there's probably no Bone Mares, since we saw Hydra as well. But Chakki has the resources, and Amnesiac does not. Captain Greenskin is an interesting inclusion, but it's not going to get the job done. In fact, it's just going to signal almost the end of the game. He can go to 12, and Amnesiac knows it's not going to be enough either way. Chakki going to take that win, 3 games. Amnesiac fought back. He made it close, but unfortunately it just wasn't close enough. The Pirate Warrior picked up a win, but I'm still on the fence about it. I'm gonna be perfectly honest. I just don't know.
But the strength of the Pirate Warrior?
Yeah.
I don't believe in it, personally. I've tried to make it work. It's a fine deck in certain circumstances, but the moment they start fighting you for the board, you just fall behind extremely quickly, and it seems that like the metagame is so focused on really getting that board. I don't really see how Pirate Warrior has the tools anymore to do so.
I still really like Paladin. I think that Murloc Paladin has great sweep potential, and Pirate Warrior at the last DreamHack, say, at Montreal before the balance changes, had that sweep potential. We were seeing all of the 3-0 sweeps happening with Priest and with Pirate Warrior, surprisingly enough. And now it just doesn't seem like it has